The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Two Functions, One Solution, Use Existing Selenium Scripts for Front-End Functional and Front-End Performance Testing. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see your GoToWebinar control panel in the upper right corner of your computer screen. You've joined the presentation listening and using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. If you have selected mic and speakers and are having difficulty hearing me, please toggle the telephone option in your control panel and dial in. If you are experiencing any issues, please type in the details right in the questions section of your control panel. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your question into the questions pane of your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. I would now like to pass it over to Clint Sprauve, Product Marketing Director, who's going to be introducing the webinar.
All right, thank you, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Glad you could join us today. So what I'd like to talk to you about on the next slide is when we think about performance and the importance of performance just within the technology industry. I started to think about what are some key areas that are really important in terms of performance, and one of the examples that came to mind was esports. Now, if either you or maybe your kids or teenagers play any type of video games, especially ones that are online like Fortnite or Apex Legends, performance is really important, especially for those that are competing in these various tournaments. Now, there's always been a debate in terms of which is preferred, the PC or the console. Well, I can give you one example of my son who had a gaming PC. His gaming PC died, and he had to switch over and started playing Fortnite on the Xbox, and he completely hated it. And I was asking him, what was the big difference? And he was saying, well, there's a lot of lag on the consoles, whether it's the Xbox or PS4, versus what you have in the PC. And that 1 millisecond difference is huge when you're trying to win a particular match. So this got me thinking about how performance matters, not only in esports, but how it matters when you're testing web applications. So as most of us that are testing using Selenium or Appium or any type of business application, we know that performance is very important, and we know how much it will cost us. So poor performance is definitely going to cost if you don't address it early and often. Now, with this particular graph, if you look at the solid black line where there's a diamond in the middle, this is a good example of what we call planned versus actual. That solid black line represents more of a best case scenario. The diamond in the middle represents that the application was released on time, pushed into production. Everything is working fine. It was released into production with very minimal functional or performance issues. Now, as we know in the real world, what usually happens is, we miss deadlines, we delay. And a lot of times performance testing isn't done when it should be done. So the bottom one, the dotted line, represents when performance testing is actually done later in the software development lifecycle, or performance issues are discovered later in the application development lifecycle. And what ends up happening is that when companies have to address those performance issues, it causes a lot of issues, because now they have to go back and figure out what are these problems and how do we address those issues and fix them. And it usually costs organizations a lot more money. So that benefit, the cost ratio actually decreases over time. So now if we go to the next slide, let's kind of look at this from a business perspective and what a lot of the organizations run into in terms of performance testing challenges. A lot of times it's what we've termed a cultural challenge, meaning that we've all talked about implementing or going through these digital transformations, DevOps transformations, And we really addressed it heavily on the functional testing side. And there's been strides to really push the performance testing side. But as we, an organization, start developing more browser-based applications, especially JavaScript applications, most of that work of the performance is taking place in the browser versus some of the earlier architectures. So if we look at the cultural challenge, application performance is done late in the software development lifecycle. Sometimes teams will use it and they'll do what's known as a hardening sprint. Well, they'll try to do performance testing at the end, but that still makes it kind of waterfallish and makes it very difficult to address those performance issues in a more efficient efficient manner, excuse me. And it causes extensive rework when issues are found. Then there's that technology hurdle, and it typically requires the use of a third-party performance testing tool or an application performance monitoring solution to actually get this information. Now, most of the organizations that we work with, they really don't like to use a third-party solution, or developers don't want to add another tool to their arsenal to address a lot of these items. So it makes it difficult when you have to use either a proprietary or a third-party solution to be able to get the information that you need early and often. So what the result is, they'll typically have either an on-premise or even a web-based solutions that are a little bit more expensive. And sometimes they're very complex because performance testing requires a certain skill set and is difficult to adopt and maintain for certain organizations. And then finally, you'll have an incomplete testing process. Many dev teams focus on front-end functional issues rather than addressing performance and functional issues early on in the life cycle because they want to make sure it works. They've got CI/CD, they're trying to get it released and get as many releases as possible and get it to the market. So the developers don't have a way to monitor performance and metrics quickly. They see them earlier and resolve those regressions much faster. If we go to the next slide, we are addressing this with our newest addition to our platform called Sauce Performance. And basically, Sauce Performance is a single solution for front-end performance and functional testing. And with Sauce Performance, our goal was to really concentrate on three key areas for those that are using Selenium to build their test automation. One is to help increase developer productivity. We want to help them resolve performance issues quickly and detect front-end performance issues early. And the way we're doing this is we're embedding these custom commands within the Selenium script. That's going to allow us to actually capture this information. And now you'll have all this information within a single dashboard to understand what exactly is going on. This is going to help eliminate delays by helping teams develop apps faster. So now, as part of your continuous testing efforts, you'll be able to continuously track front-end app performance and discover performance issues early in the CI/CD pipeline. And then finally, the benefit is the improved customer experience. And with that improved customer experience, they're going to gain better insight because now you're going to understand the key front-end performance metrics and understand the real-world user interaction with that application under test. All right, so now that we've talked about the benefits or the actual benefits of Sauce Performance, what is the difference? Now, I'm sure most of you have probably either have heard of or probably working with some of the either load and stress testing tools on the market, as well as some of the end-to-end application monitoring. So what is different? What is Sauce Labs doing that these other tools aren't doing? Well, the truth is that all the load and stress and the performance monitoring tools, they can do a certain amount of front-end performance. But the biggest difference is in terms of one is when you're doing it and how much that front-end developer needs. So by using Sauce, what we're doing is saying you're developing these Selenium scripts anyway. You have a ton of Selenium scripts. Why not be able to use that and use these custom commands and be able to capture the performance from the front end and get those front-end metrics like page load time, time to first byte, and so forth, grabbing the information and capturing that earlier. It doesn't replace some of the other tools that are out there. You still need to do load and stress. You still need to do monitoring. But what we're doing is allowing those front-end developers to be able to capture a lot of this information and capture these baselines and thresholds earlier in the software development lifecycle as they're developing their applications. And a lot of times what we're also seeing is that with some of these other tools is that it's more than what some of the front-end developers need. They want to be able to quickly understand and address those front-end performance issues quickly. and they don't necessarily want to deal with a third party solution at that particular time. So that's the main difference in terms of what we're providing, that efficiency and that ability to catch and performance, front-end performance issues early in the software development life cycle. And that's our core focus with sauce performance. Now, let's kind of look at what actually is behind sauce performance. Now, you've probably heard everyone's talking about machine learning. So I want to tell you a little bit about how we actually do it and how we're actually implementing machine learning within sauce performance to our data analysis. So a really important part of this solution is our data analysis engine that runs on the performance data that we collect. Now, without some way of making sense of all this newly collected data, we risk making customers feel like they are adrift in the sea of data without any way of charting the course. So when you're collecting all this performance data and all this information, it can be overwhelming for a lot of users and a lot of testers to really understand what's actually going on. So doing performance testing means another layer where the customer will have to find his way of building reliable, non-flaky tests. And the last thing we want to do is introduce a new layer where test flakiness can drive developers crazy. The Sauce Labs data analysis engine was designed to leverage machine learning to help customers find the signal in the noise. Now with that, we're actually going to show you a demo, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Yaroslav, and he's going to show you sauce performance in action.
Thank you, Clint. Now, so before I do a quick demo, let me talk about the way the application under test itself that we're going to be using as part of the demo. Right now, we have built a very simple test, a very simple application, very simple React test with a few views, built on top of the platform called glitch.me, which allows us to quickly modify the application and see how that responds. And this is done so that we can quickly see how our changes impact the performance of our front-end code. Now, first, I have a series of tests set up against that run on Sauce Labs that hit this URL. And as part of that process, we not only collect performance metrics, but we also establish performance baselines. And the ones that test finish running, I'll show you exactly what that means and how that looks. Now, while the tests are executing, let me quickly navigate to the Sauce Labs dashboard. And as you can see, tests are almost done. So as you can see, as part of the sauce performance, for all the URLs under test, we give customers the ability to see what was the page load over time, how many requests have been made, what is the page weight, what is the speed index, as well as things like what is the filling strip that the browser saw while the page was loading, and all of the core UX metrics. Things that are unique to us that are hard to find in other products is time to interactive, time to first meaningful paint, time to first contentful paint. And we capture them because we connect to directly to the browser APIs versus using third-party JavaScript scripts. And we are able not only capture important metrics that really point to the issues in the user experience, but also for the debugging purposes, when the problem was discovered, our customers will be able to open the entire loading event in a Chrome DevTools view. And as you can see exactly what I have here, the entire loading process is laid out to the minute detail, and you can see what was happening on the main thread, what was happening on some other layers. And it's a very useful tool when you're trying to debug and understand the root cause of the problem on hand. Now that we talked about the UI itself, let me quickly do this thing. Let me quickly introduce a regression to the application. So we have a artificial delay of 10 seconds. So once the page finishes building, on top of this, the way we help our customers really capture issues as part of kind of continuous integration, as part of existing Selenium tests, is through the kind of power of custom commands. So as part of the test performance package, our customers will be able to call a command called test performance and specify metrics that they want to check against. And what that does, essentially, test performance is a medium between kind of Selenium test and our performance APIs. So whenever the command is called, it pings our performance API, and that kind of our tools internally make a decision whether the latest run had any significant performance regressions, and if there were any, kind of it will return result fail. Otherwise, it's going to return result pass. And as part of the test, you can actually quickly, as a kind of developer or as that, you can quickly write a simple test that just asserts based on this response, as I've done here. Now, I believe like if I were to reload the page again, you would see that there's a giant delay of 10 seconds. And again, this is for demo purposes, but it's possible that in production environments this can happen. And from the perspective of Selenium test, nothing went wrong, right? The page still loaded, all the content on the page appeared as fine. But from the user perspective, there was significant kind of experience degradation that kind of existing Selenium tests would not catch. And if you were to use kind of tools like New Relic or any IPM products, you wouldn't have no kind of idea that something like this was introduced until after it was kind of customers have been impacted and you kind of had to kind of proactively react to the change versus being ahead of it. Now, if I were to run my tests again with this against this regression, a good chunk of my tests should fail. Right. And if I were to open kind of the last test, we will kind of in our UI not only kind of highlight exactly kind of what has been impacted. As you can see, we highlight dedicated metrics that have been impacted by the recent changes, right? So in this case, it's page load, speed index, as well as things like first pencil paint kind of page load. But we also highlight things that have not changed. So in this case, time to first byte has not been impacted at all. So what that means is kind of just from the perspective of just looking at exactly what has been impacted, you can tell that the problem is actually on the front end. It's not an API issue. It's not a network problem. The problem is probably with the front end code kind of sense. And kind of this tells you partially a story. Additionally, you can quickly, using the Chrome Dev tools themselves, you can open them up and see exactly that now, if in the past, the main thread didn't have any delays. Now there's a giant 10-second delay, and you can pass this information on to the development team. Or if you create the app yourself, you probably know exactly kind of what this might cause. What might be the root cause here. Now, not every performance problem is actually kind of a deal breaker, right? We don't want to necessarily stop builds or stop release processes because of a regression from 2 seconds to 4 seconds. In many cases, it's not necessarily something that you need to address immediately. Maybe you can add it to your backlog and fix it later. Maybe you need time to dig into this. But in any case, performance issues, as much as we want to believe, are not necessarily deal breakers. So if we find a problem that is not necessarily a big deal, our users have an option to simply acknowledge the new kind of baseline, the new truth, right? And what that means is the next time I run my tests, our APIs will look at this data and say, okay, well, this is the accepted range, and actually this is everything's within expected kind of behavior. So let me run my test again, and they should all pass. On top of this, our users kind of can not only kind of use this information for debugging purposes, but also if when you're debugging an existing Selenium test, right? If you have a test that you wouldn't want to make sure kind of just a problem with your Selenium kind of WebDriver test, you can quickly navigate to the network or performance information and see exactly kind of what has changed, what has been introduced recently. And if you're not even searching for performance information kind of as part of your existing functional tests, you can use this information for your debugging needs as well, to kind of try to pinpoint and understand exactly what has happened recently with the application that might make my test more flaky than it usually is. Now, as you can see, the latest test run, everything passed. And if we look at the command response, it's actually a response as a pass. Yeah. So this is a quick demo of the SaaS performance features. SaaS performance is available to a good chunk of our enterprise customers, and our users should be able to start seeing this after they fill out the kind of a beta form. We have a kind of a page on our UI on the solutions. There is a SaaS performance beta link you can hit, and kind of at the bottom of the page there is a quick form. Once you fill out the form, we will send you kind of all the information that you need in order to start using the product, as well as we will enable the performance tab for your account. Now, I think that's the end of the demo. Clint, back to you.
All right, thanks, Slav. Great presentation. So just for a recap, the top 3 areas, again, for SaaS performance is really helping organizations be able to capitalize on being able to capture performance metrics directly from within their existing Selenium scripts through the SaaS performance commands. So again, the 3 key areas, we're going to help increase developer productivity by helping resolve performance issues quickly, help develop apps faster, eliminating delays so you can discover performance issues early and often with your JavaScript applications, or mostly your browser-based applications, and improve the customer experience, because the sooner that you can address these performance issues, the better better user experience your customers are going to have once the application is released. Now, as Slav talked about earlier, we are looking for additional beta participants. So we are in the open beta mode. And as he showed on that last slide, there is a form at the bottom of that page that will allow you to sign up for it. But you can also see a video that will also give you a little bit more information, like what Slav presented, and give you a demo of SaaS performance. It'll also link you to the data sheet, as well as additional information on the program itself. So we definitely would love for you to sign up, gain more information, try it out, and give us a ton of feedback. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the presentation, but what we're going to do now is we're going to go directly to some of the questions, and Slav and I will definitely try to answer for you. So Slav, I'm going to start with this first one. And it's from Tyler, and it says, is there a guarantee for testing machines? Is there a guarantee for testing machine resources for consistent performance metrics?
So what we're doing is actually kind of we learn from the as you run tests on SaaS, we'll learn about the kind of the performance metrics overall, and we will establish upper and lower baseline for all of the kind of performance metrics that we capture. The hope here is kind of the main reason why we do focus on baselines versus absolute values is because to make sure we account for things like network kind of flakiness, as well as resources. In many cases, kind of VMs that we have in the cloud are different from your local computers, but we still want to make sure you're able, we give you tools necessary to discover performance regressions in a way that are kind of they're not relying on absolute values. And that's the hope is actually what we're seeing in reality is we're able to discover performance regressions that are resource agnostic and kind of network agnostic. Because we kind of just focus on changes, deltas versus absolute numbers.
All right, great. So the next question is, can we use the same account currently being used in the beta program for headless testing for performance beta?
Unfortunately, as of now, the headless beta, the headless offering and this kind of performance, they do not kind of work together. The performance beta works on our US instance right now, but we're definitely looking into adding support for headless in the very near term.
Okay, and next question. Are the key indicators for the data analysis engine published? If so, how can I know what to optimize?
The kind of, as of now, we do not publish that out. It's actually, we do have ability for you to see all of the metrics that we capture and description for them and what they mean. But as of now, we try not to focus on optimization as much as just helping customers discover performance regressions.
Great. Okay, and this next question says, in a virtualized environment, how can we make sure the performance measure is actual measurement and not because of the load on the main server, which is creating a virtualized environment, if, say, many processes running on sauce will affect?
So based on our testing internally, we don't actually believe that sauce resources necessarily we can handle a giant scale of testing, and our internal kind of cloud services are optimized for scale, and resource allocation is pretty much similar to what you see on load and offload. So we don't think that that's actually a problem that our customers will experience. However, again, going back to some of the performance baselines, our network, we analyze data over time. And as the more tests you're on sauce, the more we know what's the predictable kind of threshold for application performance. And as well as we casually adjust it up and down based on new incoming data. So the upper and lower baselines are not static. They actually kind of increase or decrease depending on how much network or load activity we see on our servers. Well, basically the main idea is we try to optimize for helping customers discover true performance regressions versus being notified of flaky behavior. The main kind of idea behind the tool is capture regressions and, as much as possible, avoid notifying about any kind of flaky one-off spikes.
All right, so the next question is, will the testing on performance support all browsers and the languages supported? I'm looking to see if there is any sample Java Selenium WebDriver code to do performance testing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as of now, we're our beta works on Chrome only. That's partially because Chrome has the most extended API, as well as their APIs give access to all these interesting performance metrics. We're definitely looking into adding other browsers and other platforms in the future, but we really wanted to validate the fact that we're able to provide a very solid experience for Chrome first, and then expand, use our learnings and expand into other browsers next. When it comes to sample code, we actually, as part of this kind of performance beta, once you join, I will send you a link to our documentation that contains reference code to all of the common frameworks. So not only do we cover main JavaScript frameworks, we also go into Java, Python, Ruby. Basically, try to cover all of the main testing frameworks or functional test frameworks to make sure that any customer across any setup is able to get started with our new product.
Okay. And the next question is, how is the support for mobile devices?
Yeah. So mobile devices, as of now, is next priority for us. So we're actually actively looking into seeing if we can make this bring performance testing or front-end performance testing to iOS simulators and Android emulators first. And then we also have, once we do that, we will try to expand into real devices as well.
Okay. And the next question is, will it capture the asynchronous calls after the first page load as the background events get later? I'm not quite sure if you see that one.
Yeah, so asynchronous calls are actually something that probably won't be captured necessarily directly. The way we capture metrics is through kind of capturing trace log, and we don't want to necessarily have the kind of collect trace log information for more time than we need to. There's kind of artificial cutoff that we make sure that makes sure the tests are not impacted by this performance data. So if your asynchronous call gets kind of called, I don't know, a few seconds after the page load event is finished loading, we probably won't capture it.
Okay. All right. Got a couple more questions. Shouldn't these metrics be measured in the dev cycle with full auditing capabilities of Chrome? What does Sauce Labs performance monitoring offer over that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay. So the question is, shouldn't these metrics be measured in the dev cycle with full auditing capabilities of Chrome? What does Sauce performance monitoring offer over the auditing capabilities of Chrome?
Let me see if I can kind of answer the question. It's a very interesting question. So from my perspective, this is a kind of a first step into many different things we can do for our customers. In theory, we kind of, as customers run, the more tests customers run on Sauce Labs, the more performance data we capture, the more we're able to tell a better story about their application kind of testing trends in general. So in theory, kind of this is the first step into some further kind of work we can do around helping customers optimize and kind of help them capture kind of application degradations across other parts of kind of things that they're not specifically checking, and also potentially even introduce some series of alerts that will kind of notify customers of degradations without them having necessarily write dedicated front-end performance tests or kind of use our custom command at all. So we're hoping to see if there is a potential for us to bridge the gap between maybe a monitoring as well as a kind of performance testing product.
Okay. And the next question, are there any plans to include a visually complete metric?
I believe we have that metric captured already. The problem is visual complete, I think it's, from what we can tell, was very unstable at the time when we were developing this product, but we're more than happy to add the feature back if we believe that actually gives back consistent results.
Okay, is this feature intended for single page application testing teams? Or can it also capture and report the performance attributes of individual pages within a workflow?
So currently, single page apps is something that kind of we need to optimize for. This is a beta product kind of aimed at helping customers understand kind of performance issues for URLs that have been navigated via get URL command. However, we definitely have a solution in mind of how to make this work for all kinds of kind of single page applications. We just need to get there first.
Okay. And our final question, is it capturing the response times at the page level, like post or get? Can I get the response times at the scenario level?
At the what level, sorry?
At the scenario level.
The scenario level.
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead.
So, I believe so. So there is a, beyond kind of, outside of just Sauce performance, there is other series of custom commands you can call in the context of your Selenium test. And those custom commands can give you all kinds of additional kind of metadata about the loading process. And kind of at the end of the, if you join the beta, I will send you, I will include documentation that will link to all the repos that contain references to all these custom commands, as well as how to use them and so on. And that it kind of, one of them might be actually solving the problem that the question is asking.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that. I think once the user signs up for the beta, they'll get a better feel for how it works versus a typical load or stress test tool, where you're kind of building these various performance scenarios. Whereas with sauce performance, you're actually capturing those performance and monitoring those performance metrics within your Selenium scripts versus kind of these individual scenarios. So it's really more so at the page level. So we're gathering all those front end performance metrics. And we have a list of all the various metrics or key metrics that we're actually capturing for those tests. And so that should give you a little bit more information. All right.
Yep. Yeah. So we encourage everyone to join the beta, play with our product, provide us some feedback if something doesn't fit your needs. We're more than happy to take in any kind of any of your thoughts. The sooner we're in the middle of developing more features, and it's a great time to provide feedback and make sure that the product fits your needs and kind of your expectations.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We truly appreciate it. And as Slav said, definitely check out our performance beta page, sign up, and feel free to contact us with any additional questions or any more information that you may need. Thank you, everyone.